Thanks for tuning into this episode of FinTech Focus TV, powered by Harrington Starr, the global leaders in financial technology recruitment. Head over to the Harrington Starr website where you'll be able to find all the latest jobs in financial technology across the globe. You'll also be able to download the latest issue of the Financial Technologist magazine, including the Top 1% Workplace Awards. Finally, if you're looking to grow your team, please get in touch. Enjoy the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby Babb. And today I am absolutely delighted to bring in a long-time friend of the show, Olaf Ransome. Olaf, how are you?
Great, Toby. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this one coming live from Zurich. So the background there is the city centre, even if I'm not there.
I love going around the world on this show. We've had people from literally all corners of the globe now, and it seems like there's a lot going on in Zurich at the moment.
Yeah, work is busy with this. A lot of focus on the fallout from UBS and CS. Will it be a big deal for both Switzerland generally? Will it be a big deal for the Zurich economy? Oddly enough, the biggest building of employment in Switzerland is the one up on the hill owned by Credit Suisse that had 7,000 people in it. You can imagine there's a lot of thinking going on about what does it mean as we come to the end of the year of that fateful forced marriage, whatever we want to call it, or marriage of convenience. It doesn't look like it's going to be as earth-shattering and damning as we all thought.
Yeah,
that impact will get somewhat dampened over time, and the net result can actually be quite positive for the rest of the other banks that picked up clients, picked up talent. We were talking just before we came on air about talent shortages. We have a talent shortage in Switzerland, generally. So quite possibly this is good for the other banks. So,
well, I'm a big believer in turning negatives into positives, and that's a definite opportunity out there as well. But you don't even think about those sort of things from an infrastructure perspective around towns when you talk about 7,000 people on top of a hill and the knock-on effect of every part of the economy underneath that. It's a really interesting sort of viewpoint to take on it. But look, we could be talking about that for a little while. I want to talk about Olaf Ransome at the moment and tell us a little bit about yourself and 3C Advisory. You're a well-known face in circles around the FS sector, but for those who haven't come across you so far, Olaf, tell us a little bit about your background and tell us a little bit about 3C Advisory as well.
Okay, so where to start with me? Probably the best with a nickname, which is the banker's plumber. I have somebody to thank, Chris Tattersall, ex of Capco and Grant Thornton and many other places, who coined that at a dinner in San Francisco as long ago as 2002.
That's where it came from.
Show my age. I've actually been around big financial services long enough to say that I actually settled Michael Lewis's trades before he went off to write the book Buyer's Poker. He is considerably better at writing books than he ever was at writing trade tickets back in the day when you used to have to write by hand. So I've been around for a long time, starting off at Salomons and at Goldman's, then various things at Credit Suisse, or securities operations, prime brokerage, the whole lot. I've been doing my own thing, which is 3C Advisory, probably for the last 15 years. And I help clients optimize their processes, introduce new stuff. Right now, the focus of what I do is probably at the intersection of the new and the old. So there's people doing new stuff who want to figure out how does it go in with the old. Now, that could be as simple as one of my clients right now is a FinTech, wants to get a FinTech banking license here. You can be FinTech all you want, but you still have to get a good old-fashioned kind of banking license. You have to follow some of those things. Or it might be the old, trying to figure out how to deal with the new. So one of my assignments earlier in the year was helping a big bank down in Africa think about its digital assets strategy. And you sit there and actually what you need to think about is this new stuff, and you put it that way through your existing machinery. And that stuff keeps me somewhat busy.
Mischief.
Yeah, a big topic for me is things liquidity. So if you go and look me up on LinkedIn, you can see a lot of posts on liquidity matters that I do with one of my clients, because that's all about the day-to-day and the operational things. And clients, actually of late, clients tend to call up so can have a little bit of you. So I find myself now doing smaller projects or ongoing projects for clients rather than fully working just for one client. So an interesting mix, and always looking to keep the dance card full.
I think that's a really interesting sort of play, isn't it? And probably in line with what we're seeing across the market. That sort of, I think the trendy word for it is fractional at the moment, isn't it? That people come in there and are doing more ad hoc gun for hire type pieces. And when you've got that sort of breadth of experience you've got within there, there's a lot of value you can provide to a number of different people. And seeing what's happening in the space. We were talking about that beforehand. Is I don't think we've ever seen a more transformational phase of the financial services markets than we've seen at the moment. People might talk about the electronification of the marketplaces, but it just seems that this sort of, from a technology standpoint in particular, this is golden era of opportunity with loads of different things converging at the same sort of time. And you mentioned about the intersection of the new and the old. We've spoken before. You're on a part of the documentary you did alongside the Realization Group called The Era of Convergence, talking about the sort of convergence of traditional markets and decentralized finance along at the same sort of time. There's a lot of a real lack of education in that sort of space, and for people who can come in there and provide that sort of plumbing, as you say, in between it, is a real asset, right?
Yeah, I think the hard part here is you talk to a lot of these people who go into fintechs and they look at it and go, I've got this great idea, I'm going to change the world. You almost have to proverbially trick the bubble and try to explain to them how does that new thing is going to fit in with the old. And I always try to help people with this. I break down all the work that banks do into two piles, mandatory and discretionary. Mandatory is the Basel regulations are changing, I've got to do something, or the Bank of England's called me for this report. Everything else is discretionary. You can do it or not do it. And you get into a big bank, and I can pick one, say at Nomura, where I did some work years ago. You talk about a project, and like, will this move the meter by $500,000? That's the first question. And you and I went down to the pub with some mates who work in other businesses. And we said, yeah, we didn't do a project because it wasn't going to make more than $500,000 worth of difference. They look at us and go, guys, what are you talking about? And then the other factor is, will it make me more than $500,000 a year? And will I get a return in under 2 years? Because I know damn well I'm not going to be in this seat. There's a hellish short-term thing for things, financial services, because people move around and all the rest of it. And so it's very hard then to get those discretionary things pushed through. Now, that said, I think all the financial services finds itself at this interesting crossroads. For all its sins, Bitcoin and blockchain, like them or hate them, has done one thing. It's led to a lot of introspection of looking at our processes. Push comes to shove, lads, we're not actually that efficient. We're largely effective. We do all the stuff we have to do. My part of the business, we make payments, we settle trades, that operational day-to-day interaction stuff. But when you actually look at it, we're not that efficient. And we've got a lot of very old systems in there. There's an interesting comment from a senior person at UBS who will remain nameless. But I gave him a lift to the station the other day, and we were talking about the UBS CS takeover. And he was pretty intimately involved with it. He said, people have got no idea. The IT real estate at CS was so bad, so old, so complicated. It still is till they get rid of it. But it was consuming an enormous share of all the available money. He didn't realize quite how bad it was. He said, we've turned off 75 systems so far. We've got another 4,000 to go. 4,000. So
it's incredible, isn't it?
They're an easy target. One, because they died, and secondly, because I know quite a lot about them. And their core booking systems called BS70, booking system 70, refers to the year of its.
I was going to say.
Yep, absolutely, COBOL and all the other stuff. But they're not alone. All the banks have got huge projects. Julius Baer down the road will admit that they've got $1 billion project to update their core banking system. So you've got all this legacy TradFi stuff that's really hard to do. You've got blockchain, Bitcoin coming along, and people going, oh yeah, we could make some improvements here, some improvements there. Now, in the end, whether we use blockchain or not, or tokenization, me, Plumber, I don't care. So I don't mind. I just care that we have good infrastructure, I should say. And there's this great opportunity with all these new, whether we call them DeFi things, or FinTech, whatever you want, whichever term you want, there's all this new stuff, but it's not going to just one day or tomorrow replace the old. There's so much old stuff that somehow these things have got to come together. And that's that convergence or team at TRG we've been having about somehow these things are going to come together and will enable the new and improve on the old as well.
I think that's the important part of this, right? Because you've used terms beforehand, improving utilization. I've been speaking a lot recently about productivity and removing friction and everything else in that sort of process. And there's been enormous frustrations about this sort of procurement process in finance, or removing enterprise technology and sort of replacing it with more easy to use and modern technology. But it's not easy. You're talking about doing stuff which has massive ramifications, not necessarily just on the individuals who are implementing it and getting it wrong, but for the whole economic infrastructure of the globe at various different stages. So these are decisions that need to be respected at that sort of stage. But I think what's really interesting about the sort of development that we've seen in terms of technology over the last couple of years is that we're seeing things there which can be bolted in and create these much improved Frankenstein monsters of tech that allow people to do things in a much more efficient way. Because there's only so much you can do to keep lowering cost as things change as a business. And the route forward, in my mind, is to increase productivity and utilization of everything. And if you can maintain an element on cost and have technology that reduces that sort of cost alongside it, you mentioned some of those spends earlier on, but build something that's fit for type and allows people to be faster, quicker, and stronger. That to me creates a real opportunity within it, and that's something I could be talking about for a long time. So let's have a look. Let's have an eye on 2024 and the year ahead. Let's have an eye on where those sort of opportunities really sit in terms of the new stuff coming through and how it augments the old, and keep an eye focus on that sort of thing. What's the eyes of the banker's plumber on what to expect in 2024 from a financial services perspective?
Hey, now I've got the slight disadvantage of us recording this at the end of the year. I'm going to start,
especially with how everything changes at the moment. As at time of recording, we're not sure who OpenAI's CEO is going to be tomorrow, let alone at the start of the year, right?
And I've got good reason for saying that. And the good reason, I've got some great friends at Finality, which are trying to create a new payment system, but one where the payment asset or the means of payment is one that's 100% backed by reserves at the central bank. So I often get asked, why is this tokenization stuff? Why is it not really taken part? And that was what we were noodling on LinkedIn earlier this morning on that one.
Yeah.
I always have a stock explanation for it. My stock explanation is, look, firstly, you're missing the means of payment on chain. You can make up a bank stable coin, but don't get me started on that. I could be here for the next 6 hours. But you need that means of payment, which is what Finality was brought into existence for, with very wide backing from a bunch of banks, from UBS, State Street, Bank of New York, Santander and Co. That's going to be that means of payment that you can connect through interoperability to security settlement, to making straight payments for derivatives, to doing foreign exchange transactions. That's a big enabler for all the new stuff that comes along. Now, and I joked a little bit about it because they're due to go live just about now. So we're at this awkward thing of talking about the thing that's either just about to happen or by the time we put this one on air. Yes, happened.
Could make you look a great futurist, though, right?
Yeah. So, more on that later. So that enabling the money being the common denominator is super important. And when I looked at it, I always say, look, what you end up with if you do this well is a single pool of liquidity. Because you say, I've got this payment asset, P, that can do things, P for payments, DVP for securities, delivery versus payment, PVP for foreign exchange. And suddenly the whole liquidity management thing becomes easy to do, to your capacity point, and making that easier. So I think that's a vital step in the whole thing. The other thing that I talk about when people ask me why is tokenization not taken hold, and I say, look, a lot of people keep trying to do a tokenization something or other for something that's already securitized. And whenever I talk to people, I say, look, it's bloody difficult to make any business case for you to come to me and say, hey, replace your securitized thing with my tokenized thing.
Yeah.
That's maybe if it's end of life, perhaps, maybe, and that's been missing. Up until about last week, if you'd asked me, I'd have said my hope is we do things in the short-term debt space, working capital, because that's not traditionally securitized in most countries. I think my friends in South Africa are the exceptions to that rule, but I'll leave it at that. And then last week, we saw an announcement on this Project Guardian thing that's happening down under the MAS in Singapore, where JP Morgan and Apollo, the investment manager, had done something together, and they looked at it from the field of alternatives. And their view of alternatives is that's anything that's not a publicly traded security, stock, or bond. So anything that's a hedge fund, private equity, venture capital, real estate. And I'll say, I missed this. I absolutely missed this opportunity. I'm super glad I read their report, because what they did is they said, hey, actually, if we could improve the process, and we'll try this via tokenization for all these alternative investments. Let's just leave it at private equity, where they take money and say, hey, commit to give us 5 million in capital. We'll call it over the next maximum 5 years. The returns will be over 10 years. All those processes are very manual. So if you're at UBS, for example, with or without Credit Suisse, you can get to invest in some of those things. But not every client at UBS can, because it's bloody manual, awkward, lots of friction, to use the term you had earlier. There's nothing great about the processes that's in there. And I actually, my dinner date, as it were, for tonight is somebody who spends his life doing all that awkward stuff at Credit Suisse, and probably will do for quite some time.
Yeah.
No hope of let go.
There's a job for a while, right?
Merge stuff, because it's so bloody manual that he just about knows, well, I do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and it goes in here, and I've got a spreadsheet, all of the usual stuff that ends up happening in banks. And the guys at JP and Apollo demonstrated how you tokenize various parts of that process and effectively improve it. And what they were aiming at is they said, well, look, if we've got processes that are as good as what we've got in public securities, our whole asset allocation machinery and discretionary investing gets really simple. Now, the UBS machinery down the street from me, if you want to invest in public securities, it's really good. They've got thousands of clients. You've got some equities, some bonds, some mutual funds. If the chief investment officer goes, I think we should be underweight America, although anything would be underweight America by comparison, and overweight Germany, the machinery just bangs into gear like an Audi going down the Autobahn at 180. Great, it all happens. As soon as you've got any of those alternatives in the mix, it doesn't happen. The great thing, looking at what JP and Apollo are doing, we can get rid of all those frictions. We can make that much more available. We can manage better. And even they said, look, then you need to hold less cash if you're the investment manager, because all these processes are easier. There's a thing in investing called cash drag. If you're the portfolio manager, you have to hang on to cash, even though you'd like to invest. But because the processes are awkward, you've got a bit more cash. Simple terms. If we've got less friction, there's less cash. If there's less cash, there's more performance. And I was really pleasantly surprised by that report. Part of me, damn, I missed that part of the market. Wasn't thinking about that when I talk about tokenization. But the other point to our what could happen coming down the road, will people use this tokenization? I looked around, wow, yep, that's ripe for some progress there. And I can see that as a process that could replace something that is actually really bad. It's not tokenization replacing securitization. And to use the 3 C's in the title of the firm, if you've got better process, you've got more control. If you've got more control, you've got more capacity. And if you've got more capacity, you've got less cost.
Yeah.
And those, they're the reason for those 3. You can't fiddle with the cost alone at the end. You've got to start at the front. If you get the control, you get capacity, and if you get those 2, down goes the cost. And I love that. I've been writing about that one in a couple of places and commenting. I thought, wow, good job, Apollo and JP. That pointed the way. I can see to our era of convergence topic. Yep, the new tech stuff can fit into the old. The old process wants efficient asset allocation, things to be as little friction as public securities. And the new is, well, yeah, we can use these new processes to enable that for this asset class. Terrific.
I think that's so important, isn't it? Because to sort of to and fro on LinkedIn, for those who haven't been following us on LinkedIn, you've been missing out. But more importantly, we had an event at the start of this week saying is 2024 the year where institutional digital assets finally take off? And there was people on either side of the fence on that particular argument. But the convincing part for me from it was, and it absolutely is in line with what you're saying, is that all over the globe, there are people here looking at this particular issue and being excited about the technology and excited about the potential and excited about what can happen. Now, whether institutional digital assets finally take off, whatever that actually means in reality, is that what we will see is an awful lot more innovation in a space there, which is absolutely riddled with innovative opportunity. And you're right that when you see bits and pieces out in Asia that sort of can be ported across the rest of the globe and see these opportunities, that's just the putting of one part of the thread, right? And there are so many different parts of this that can come into it. So I agree with you that there is a year within the space that I think creates a real opportunity. And even coming back to it, doing that documentary, and this is why I love this sort of digital asset sector as a whole so much, is it's so rapidly changing and everything goes through. We interviewed you for the Year of Convergence documentary almost like at this time last year to the day. We released it, I think, on November the 23rd, and this is November the 22nd that we're filming this. So a year ago, we were putting a documentary out exactly the time when the whole world of digital assets was changing fairly seismically from the whole SBF fiasco and everything else that came behind it. You fast forward another year alongside a crypto winter that's been involved in it, and you're seeing further developments and further opportunities and people thinking in different ways about where it goes. And it's only seemed to have sort of poured more gasoline on the bonfire of change within the space for people to be thinking a little bit more around it. And to me, it's only exacerbated the whole concept of the traditional and decentralized markets coming together to create these opportunities within it. And I know this is something you've been a great thinker about beforehand. We're taking the movie, i.e. the documentary of the Era of Convergence. And I know you've been working with the Realization Group on creating a book around the subject that will be hopefully coming out in the not too distant future. You might well be the next Michael Lewis for all we know from this as well. So we'll watch this space.
I wish.
Tell me a little bit about your concept of that and how the two of what to expect in 2024 and the Year of Convergence and that whole movement and what sort of things and themes you're really putting out into the book.
Very much book stuff is we're trying to explain, well, look, what have you got now and where will the new stuff have to fit in? So a little bit of it is some education on what are the processes now so that if we start talking about the new, you've got a good base on which to understand it. And I realized as we put through the stuff in the book and we got editors helping, unless you're very close to this stuff, people don't necessarily understand the detail. So
it's complicated, right?
It is a complicated business. And I always use this analogy. I'm sitting in Zurich, which is just down the road from Europe's motor city, which is Stuttgart. Mercedes-Benz and Porsche are up the road from me. Now, on any given day, they don't have to do very much together unless they're calling each other to figure out who's cheating how much at the diesel scandal. Let's just put that aside. They don't have to do a lot unless their cars are autonomous cars and they're all trying to drive on the same road. They can leave each other in peace. In financial services, we've got all this activity of payments and settlement. We have to interact massively every day. So we have to do this hard work to get some consensus, to change the ecosystem, to change the infrastructure, all our so-called FMIs, financial market infrastructure. That's hard. So I'm hoping that as we talk about some of those things and say, look, and here's the potential. We provide a bit more detail on some of the research that's been done. How much money is there to be saved? Another great example, I was brushing up on something this week, actually for the book, part of the edits, and wow, 2018, Accenture did a study and said, yeah, banking on blockchain. Of course, they just used blockchain as what processes could be improved with blockchain. And as I've said, I don't mind if we use blockchain. I just care that we improve processes if I'm a farmer. And they reckoned, as far ago as 2018, $8 billion of costs across wholesale banking, which is about 30% of the cost base in operations. I've always used that as a benchmark. There's definitely potential. We're not as efficient as we like to think we are. And then the good folks down under in Australia, the Reserve Bank, did a little bit of research on what potentially the impact could be in the Australian capital markets alone. Wow, were those some big numbers? This was done by the Reserve Bank, so pretty serious lot. This is not. And they dug in it and went something like, I don't know, the exact numbers are not something like about 3 billion US of potential cost savings in the Australian capital market alone. So similar to that, Accenture, if we have better processes, we can be cheaper, faster, better, etc. And about 8 billion in savings in capital costs. I was like, wow, those guys at Accenture weren't over-egging it when they talked about this. So we're trying to, in the book, help people understand where some of those process improvements might come from, what might happen that will let us realize those. And I have to say, I was super encouraged by our Australian friends. Like, wow, 11 billion in your market alone. I rest my case that we're not efficient. So we really want to help as much as possible to explain, yeah, here's where some of the inefficiencies are. And here's how we might take advantage of them and do new stuff in a sensible way alongside the old, having them come together as opposed to believing the bee's knees of fintech and we're just going to replace all the old and it's going to be rip and replace, which seldom happens.
It's an incredible scale of opportunity, isn't it? That's the exciting thing for me in all this. And I often ask people who've been in, there's a lot of people who've been in banking for many years who've got tired of being in the system and very, very much attracted to this bright new shiny thing with regards to the decentralized market and its application for how it can make their world that much more interesting. And I think the predominant and overarching thing that people tell me is the technology and the scale and scope of the technology and what it can do and how transformative it can be is the real excitement of it. And yeah, that to me makes it a very, very exciting year coming ahead for what we'll see. And I guess when we did the documentary in 2022 and started thinking about it in 21, where we've come to so far and where I think we're going to go over the next couple of years is a rocket ship in terms of where it goes. So it's an exciting thing.
Yep.
I told you that half an hour goes very quickly in our company, and it has done. So I'm going to move on to a final subject because we could be talking about the euro convergence for a long time, I know. But I want to go. I want to go exactly. You're now you're in the show. You're going to be coming back a lot. I've got this title, and I'm looking down because I'm going to read it because it's one that you don't see on too many business cards. But you've been described as alongside a banker's plumber, as many other things, but among them is a liquidity futurologist. So tell us a little bit about where that comes from, what it means, and why it's beneficial for people to engage with you because of that.
Okay, so that title comes from some very nice folks at a company called Planixs, which is Planixs, planixs.com, if you want to look them up or look me up and you'll see me on LinkedIn. They're in the real-time intraday liquidity management solution space. Very specialist part of all the things we do in financial services. But if you think of it in simple terms, and I'm a plumber, so I tend to go simple. Every day, I mentioned earlier, we've got to settle trades, make payments. Trying to have enough money in the right time, in the right place at the right time, or rather liquidity, is quite a science and almost an art as well in doing that. I always joke with some of the trading types, and I have my old boss at Finality run around to thank for the gift that keeps on giving, because he used to be an FX trader. He says, yeah, we just book trades. We just assume money. Everyone just assumes money, books a bunch of trades. Yeah, value day, Wednesday. It's all great. Everything's going to happen. And somehow magically it does, because people manage the liquidity and it gets to the right point. We mentioned complexity earlier and how complex our business is. It is a big challenge to actually make all that stuff happen. And complexity goes up and the volumes go up and the values go up. Of course, inevitably, you end up relying on software solutions. I would not want to show anybody what we were using at Salomons back in the 80s when the firm was leveraged 40 to 1 and there was still in a Deutschmark, and
it's incredible, isn't it, to think?
That was literally sticky tape and colored paper and pens and all the rest of it. So what the Planixs guys have done is realized that as we got past 2008, we need to be able to do a better job of understanding what we expected to happen and what has happened. And they started in the world of cash and money and bank accounts, and are expanding into collateral. And as we've seen with the collapse of SVB, with the near-death experience of the pension funds in the UK this time last year, actually, and Credit Suisse, this whole have you got control over liquidity just becomes more and more important. And the more important it becomes, the better set of tools you need, ultimately, the more software you need in a very simple manner of speaking. And I've known the guys at Planixs from their earliest days of just getting started, just going, okay, how many payments did we think we were making? What has happened? And that business has grown and grown. And the potential usage for it has gone, it's really across the whole wholesale sector, from sell side to buy side to corporates. So they asked me to give them some help. We're trying to evangelize about things, liquidity management and intraday. And in doing that, very kindly gave me that wonderful title of Liquidity Futurologist. And those who are interested, go look me up on LinkedIn and you'll see the things that I post about and talk about.
Speaking of that, there's going to be a lot of people who've been interested in a load of the topics that you're talking about. I speak to people every day who are looking for more information around this. You mentioned about getting the dance card full and keeping yourself busy on that side of things in this fractional world that we live in today. So, Olaf, tell me, who should be reaching out to you? Who can you help? And what sort of things should people be discussing with you at the moment?
So firstly, let's start where we just left off, on things of liquidity, which I think should be more top of mind closer to the top of the house. Anyone who's doing treasury and cash management, if this is on your agenda, whether you're on the sell side, on the buy side, in fact, probably on the buy side particularly, because often we see the buy side, particularly the pension insurance business, they're a little bit only set up for the days when the weather is really good and don't have all the controls and the capacity to deal with the windy days. And even some folks who might be coming from corporates, you've got some of the same notions. You can find me at 3cadvisory.com or on LinkedIn as the Banker's Plumber, which is easy to find. Or you might be a fintechs wondering, well, how the hell do I make this, what looks like a great idea, fit in with the existing world and how that's going to happen? Or might be coming from the other side of it, from what you and I would probably call the TradFi world, saying, hey, I can see all this stuff happening. What do I need to do? If I've just done a very small bit of work for a niche consultancy in London, just can you help us understand what's going on in the regulatory space and what firms should be thinking about around this whole digital asset thing? And you try to say, look, doing nothing is not a great option, and then you get surprised by it. If you're going to do something, here's a suggestion on where to start to try and keep this in the realms of the manageable. Here's some areas to look at, because I think there's exciting things going on across payments. You mentioned finality, collateral management with the guys at HQLAMs, but you need a sense of where to go look. So I hope there's people who are looking for some thoughtful advisory work there to say, hey, this is what we should be doing over the coming years.
Absolutely. And look, I think that's so important, because I often think of economists at this sort of scale and just how difficult it is right now to predict the future, but how important it is at the same sort of time to be making those sort of bets and putting yourself in the right sort of position. I think in this world, this financial services world that we live in at the moment, we've seen such incredible volatility over the last few years, but we're also seeing things that have played out pattern-wise at various different stages in the past. And that's the ability to put that into perspective and to translate it into practical things that can help you and your business grow in through the complexity and the mist that we live in, I think is really important. And what I'll say, just to give some feedback that you'll be too embarrassed to give to yourself, Olaf, is everyone who I've ever spoken to about you has got massive respect for what you do and how you come across and the work that you've done for people. And I've heard incredible reports about it, and I've always loved listening to it and seeing what you've written and what you've put out there content wise. I think there's a massive amount of value you bring to it. So yeah, if people are watching at the moment and the issues that resonate, please do get in touch with Olaf. And I'm gonna give you one last question just to finish this off, and it's a little bit off topic, but is the Premier League coming back to Anfield in 24?
I presume that is without necessarily the benefit of Manchester City being relegated on that question, because as we're recording this to two of us today, of course, that's all in the that's all there. I think there's a big burning desire to do it properly. Of course, we were robbed in the COVID era of the ability to celebrate that thing. It was only half a victory. Yeah. I think you're seeing a tremendous amount of momentum. I think we've got that at the moment. Clark's shown a fantastic ability to rejuvenate the side and motivate everyone. Again, as one of my friends, Ian Scott, always talks about financial services, fine margins. Whatever it is, this is going to go down to the wire. Will Liverpool be in there with a shout? Yes, I think is the simple answer. I don't think they're going to go off the rails between now and the end of the year. This will be close. It will come down to some fine margin. Does De Bruyne come back from injury at Man City and kicks up a gear? Maybe not. We also with Virgil van Dijk didn't. He came back in the end fit, but wasn't quite there. He is now. It definitely is now. It's going to be very narrow. I think there's this. It's just a huge desire at Anfield to see this thing. I think if you're Klopp, you're sitting there going, yeah, the last one didn't really count so much. I've got to
2.0. 2.0 will be all the sweeter.
You could offer Jurgen all the money in the world tomorrow to be the German national trainer. He's not going to take it because the kind of guy is, no, damn it. I absolutely am going to get out there and I'm going to try my damnedest with the boys to win the thing. It might be this year, might be next year. And then he can ride off into the sunset. And I think in that sense, Liverpool are just blessed with that leader who's absolutely determined to do it. If he wasn't, he wouldn't be there. But you can see that in every word he says, and it as to where his heart is, and that where his heart will count for an awful lot. Might just win a Europa Cup on the way there as well.
So I'm hearing doubles in my head from that side of things. So
he hasn't got
be it liquidity or football, you're a futurologist in every single sense of the word. And I hope you're right that we're in the shake at the end of the year.
Who knows? We might get to meet up at Anfield once as well.
One day.
Toby,
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on, and lovely talking to you as always.
Thanks very much. See you soon. Have a great week, mate. Cheers.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you on another episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.